Who said nothing in the English language rhymes with orange? Welcome to Swansea City, Tom Gorringe. What will Andy Coleman's legacy be? Who the hell is going to be in the opposition dugout at Elland Road? Has Zan Vipotnik arrived? And should we start looking over our shoulders again? All that and more on today's Only Swans Podcast. So, Carwyn, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad, not so bad. It took a while to set this one up today, but we got you eventually, got you for your enjoyment.
One day, hopefully, we'll be there. At about 20-minute mark, we'll be ready to go.
But not yet. We're still getting used to it at the moment.
The beginners.
Yeah, so where I think we should start probably by talking about the departure of Andy Coleman. That was obviously announced about a week or so ago now. What were your thoughts on that one?
Obviously, it's the best for the club, really. I think, we'll both agree on that. I didn't see a way forward for him, really, but it was a shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I mean, he's made such big plays of how he's so committed to the club, boots on the ground. How many times do we hear that? And, really did uproot his life, move his family over here. So to make such a big decision to step away and go back to America, it is a surprise, but ultimately it probably does feel like the right decision. I mean, what would you suggest his legacy is going to be?
I think he's got a pretty poor one, but I think his fellow owners have probably, pulled him out of the ship, while they still could,
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, horrendous decisions when it comes to recruitment, I'd say. I mean, some really poor signings on his watch.
The backing of Paul Watson.
The backing of Paul Watson, 100%. And that was one that left a really sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, I think. I'd also suggest managerial appointments. I mean, let's be honest, I think we both like Luke Williams, but at the same time, it didn't work out. He did lose his job. Michael Duff was an unmitigated disaster, no matter how you look at it. So to only make two managerial hires during his time here, both of them go like this,
I think the biggest thing is just the inability to get signings done. Like the amount of players that we've been interested in and been able to complete over the last 2 years has been absolutely mental. I haven't seen many clubs struggle as much as we have.
We've really struggled to get to
he was by all accounts, he was pretty much running around Slovenia, Slovakia.
Yeah, he flew to Slovenia to get Zan Vipotnik in, wasn't it?
Wouldn't leave until he signed the contract.
A doctor as well, or something like that, wasn't it? Yeah,
crazy.
I do think there's some areas where you can credit him. I think he should be commended for trying to bring fans closer to the club. I mean, we've all, and this is kind of my worry now, is we've all moaned for years about absent American owners. And
he was there.
He was there. Yeah. He made an effort. Are we now going to go back to a system of absent owners who we don't see anything from, don't really hear much from, who leave other people to run the club on a day-to-day basis? I mean, if they leave other people to run the club on a day-to-day basis and these people are competent, then you can't really have too many complaints. But at the same time, you would like to hear from your owners. And I just hope that level of dialogue that he offered will continue, really. Yeah. And I think the bringing fans in, those meetings he did with fans were good. I know, some people will have spoken to him one-on-one, whatever. I think he does impress one-on-one. And he talks a good game. I always did feel his heart was in the right place. But that argument became harder and harder to make as things went on, really, didn't it?
I saw a few questioning it on Twitter over the last few days when he was announced he was leaving. Was his heart really in the right place? Like, some were calling it the most ridiculous statement ever. I think it was. I think he's just not a footballing man. We knew that all along, that he was never a footballing man. He cared a lot about this club. It's just, he was way too out of his depth for it. And I don't think he realised how much he'd be out of his depth until he came here.
And I think part of that is you have to accept that. Put your ego aside, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a tough one where part of wanting the best, wanting success for the club is knowing when to go, I can't do this, and look to delegate responsibilities, which he has done in the end with the appointment of Richard Montague and Tom Gorringe, both footballing people. Obviously, we'll come on to Tom Gorringe in a bit because that's the more recent appointment. But it's too little too late, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, 2 transfer windows now, completely...
down the drain. So Montague is the football guy. He's the brains, really, in terms of bringing players in, bringing managers in. He wasn't brought here until after the January window.
Very strange.
It is strange. I know he was working a notice period, but it is strange. I mean, where do you think Andy Coleman goes from here now? Do you think he just fades into the background?
Yeah, he's still got shares in the club at the end of the day. I think he just works from a side, back in America.
reminds us of how things were with Silverstein, really, isn't it? When he first came and was very prominent, and then he faded into the background, and obviously he's now departed altogether. I think we should probably move on to the arrival of Tom Gorringe, which happened last month, and less than a month later, he's already been promoted from Chief Operating Officer, which is what he arrived as, which some of you might, I mean, what a Chief Operating Officer does is a little bit sort of opaque in football. That was what Paul Watson's job was at Luton. So, I mean, how much of the football inside you really do if you're a Chief Operating Officer, you don't really know. But that obviously came under debate when Watson was here. He's already been promoted to the role of CEO. So he is essentially Andy Coleman's replacement. What do you make of that?
I am slightly worried by what I've seen on Twitter from a few Bristol Rovers fans. Why wouldn't you be at the end of the day? You're always going to be worried about what a past club's saying. But, apparently he seems like he's meant to be a really smart bloke, knows his way around football business quite well. So I'm happy to give him a chance, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think part of that, you also have to remember what Huddersfield fans were saying about Julian Winter when he first came. And I think most people would agree he did a pretty good job while he was here and spoke well, certainly. Always talked a good game, which is part of the problem sometimes, isn't it? I mean, he has experience in football. We asked, I think it was the first episode we sat here and said, we need football people doing football roles. I mean,
we have got that now, to be fair,
we have that now. So I don't think you can have too many complaints. I think you have to give him a chance. I'm happy to give him a chance. He's worked at Bristol Rovers, which is a club obviously lower down in the food chain as. He's worked at Brighton before when they first came to the Premier League in a more junior role, admittedly. But he's a relatively young guy. He's learning his way. So hopefully, I wish him all the best, of course. And obviously, we'll be working closely alongside Richard Montague as well. I mean, it's a lot of new names for people to get their heads around.
Yeah, it is, God.
Especially when there'll be a new manager name coming in at some point as well.
I'm really excited to see what Richard Montague can do, to be honest, because his sort of statistical background does really interest me. I'd like to see where he takes us and what sort of approach he goes with in terms of transfers and with the appointment, because by all means it does look like we're going to be semi-focusing abroad, looking for an abroad manager, which is clearly down to statistics that he has worked out. So I'll be interested to see that.
So the talk we're hearing at the moment is that we've narrowed it down to 2 candidates and Sheehan, and that those 2 candidates are both based abroad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is the talk at the moment. Obviously, that's subject to change. We could hear a name, but I mean, we haven't got any names. We could have a name by the time you're watching this, because we're recording this on Thursday night. And there's no talk of who the manager is going to be at the moment, but I think, two names from abroad, what would you, obviously we don't know who they are yet, but what would you make of going abroad? Well,
I think I've made it very, very clear in the last 2 podcasts that I would absolutely love us to go abroad. So, I'm all for it. Why not?
Yeah. And I think, obviously, it sounds like Sheehan has made a bit of an ultimatum to the club, doesn't it? I don't know what your sort of understanding of that is, but of that he doesn't particularly want to take on the job after the international break. I completely understand that. I get it. It's frustrating, of course. I think we'd like a bit of stability, but you can also understand from his point of view if he needs job security. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we could say, I'll do it till the end of the season. And then at the end of the season, we turn around and go, thank you very much. And he's turned down potential interest in him before that.
He could equally take us down as well, which would completely kill
his
stocks.
Do you think we do go down with Sheehan?
No, but we are closer than we were the last time we filmed. What is it, 6 now? It was 10. So there is still a world where we could go down. I don't think we do.
I can't see Sheehan taking us down.
No, I couldn't either. But there is obviously a world where he could, and that kills his stock big time. Then
would you? I know obviously there's been 3 games since we last recorded. You said last time you wouldn't really be willing to make the case for him, as I know we've lost 2 of those games. But what would you say you've made of him so far, of how he's sort of handled himself, carried the team?
I think we've said it all throughout. He has handled himself very well. He's a good speaker, and ultimately, he knows what fans sort of want. In terms of the camaraderie after the games and the fist bumps, getting the players involved and stuff. I still wouldn't back him to be our manager. I don't want him to be. We have looked flat in some of the games under him recently, but fair play. I think he has done a commendable job, 100%.
Yeah. Speaking of those 2 sort of foreign candidates that we obviously don't know the identity of, but our understanding is that potentially they look to fit the Swansea way more, we're looking, obviously Richard Montague comes from Notts County. Notts County have got a similar sort of approach to us. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree it's a more obvious fit in terms of a sporting director. He's coming from a club with our background and understands the way we operate. And it looks like he is going to try and bring somebody more in the mould of what we'd imagine than I'd say Alan Sheehan is into the club. Would you say that's the right decision?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it in the first episode. I think that, the Swansea way, whether people think it's dated, whether they, understand what it is, whether they believe in it, whatever, we call some flack for saying that, everyone's got a different opinion about the Swansea way now, which I still believe is the case.
I do agree.
I'm happy with sticking with it. I think hopefully it's a manager with, sort of similar approaches to the Swansea way, but isn't afraid to sort of switch it up and
I'd just like to see us play a bit quicker.
Exactly, just a bit quicker, keep the ball on the floor and just be exciting, because I think that is, what we're missing now is the excitement factor. You don't really look forward to going to the games because the football for the last year has been pretty turgid.
I think it's a sort of underrated quality in football. I mean, literally today as we're recording, I saw Thomas Tuchel saying, what do you want? Obviously, England job is very different, kettle of fish to Swansea, but like, what do you want to bring to that? And he said excitement, and it is true of like. The end of the day, I think one of the most exciting parts of, or one of the things that should be most exciting in football for fans is you go to a game and are entertained.
Yeah.
And the question is, has that been the case for a while now? And I'm not necessarily sure it has with some of, with Luke Williams and Michael Duff. Mm-hmm. I think there were times when Russell Martin's football was pretty dull, to be honest, but there were other times when it came together and it was some of the most entertaining we've seen.
I don't think there's really been like a truly, completely exciting manager since probably Graham Potter.
Yeah, I think...
like whether Steve Cooper got us to a playoff final or not, you can't deny winning in the 90th minute every week isn't that exciting to watch on your telly.
I don't know, Mike. On
the telly. If we were in the stadium, fair enough, but he was always on the telly, so it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah, we've spoken to that before, and we've like what the legacy would be if we were in the grounds for those games. I think it would be very different.
It would be crazy.
Yeah.
I think we'd look back on that very fondly. But, watching it on the TV, Nottingham Forest were scoring last minute. That was pretty dull.
What would you say about, is now the time necessarily to sort of reinvent the wheel and take a risk, would you say? Obviously, you talked about, you think the threat of relegation. You don't necessarily think we go down with Sheehan. Is now necessarily the time to reinvent the wheel, bring a sort of foreign coach in, who is going to try and have some bright ideas, maybe change a few things? Or is now the time for a sort of safer pair of hands, which is probably what Sheehan represents, isn't it?
I wouldn't have hated if Sheehan just stayed till the end of the season, kind of, just because I think he would have kept us up. But at the same time, I don't think we're in any ridiculous danger of going down, even though it looks closer than it was. I still don't think we're we're in any more danger than we were really. So, I don't see why not, to be honest.
Who do you think the three sides who go down are?
I'd love Cardiff to be one of them, obviously.
Yeah,
so, I'm going to throw them in one of the three. And then probably Luton and Plymouth.
Yeah.
Or Stoke. Stoke could
I
be
don't
in there,
think Cardiff go down. I think Stoke probably
go
down.
I think... same.
Stoke look awful.
And Cardiff do have it in them to pick up a result. Whereas
still beat us 9, but they look awful.
Bad us as
well. I think what I think potentially see being the case with us is I think we will probably have bottom 3 form. I think only Luton and Stoke have got worse form than us in 2025, and I think that will probably remain to be the case.
Yeah.
But I think we'll have done enough early in the season that it won't necessarily come back to bite us.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, Derby are getting better and the gap is closing there. There's a chance that when we finish the game against them, they could be level on points with us, which, given they're currently sitting in the bottom 3, is a pretty scary thought. They're only 6 points behind. Obviously, our next fixture is Leeds. How do you see that one going? And do you think we have any chance of getting anything from that, really?
I wouldn't say it's likely. I mean, Elland Road, the way they're playing this season is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. They are an unbelievable side. So.
They are. I think on their day, they're probably the best side in the league.
And,
for me.
It's going to hurt, but I wouldn't be shocked if Joel Pro were to bag a hat-trick, to be honest. I mean, he's on fire. Was he top scorer of the league? Yeah.
No, he's one of the top scorers in the league. He's top scoring striker in the league, I think, because his Saints is obviously number one.
Yeah.
But, they are the best team in the league, I think, when they're at their best. I think Burnley have got a higher floor than them. I think Burnley deserve to go up. I think it should be Burnley and Leeds who go up. Sheffield United aren't on that level for me. But you've got, the they aren't as consistent as Burnley. They don't have as much of a tight defence as Burnley. I think they can be got at a little bit more. I mean, areas for me that I'd suggest, probably they are a bit weak. Meslier, of course, in goal.
Well, I mean, you only have to look at the home game. What was it, 4-3? We looked fantastic in that game. We really went toe-to-toe with them, and it is probably the most exciting game I've watched us play this season. We were really good.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I just think Leeds are absolutely ruthless, and if we give them anything like we've been giving the teams we've played in the last few weeks, then...
And we know all too much about Leeds' best players. I mean, Joe Roden.
Welsh, so...
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think Ampadu's still out injured, isn't he? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But you've got Joe Roden, who's, probably their best centre-back. Leeds fans might say Stroke, but I think Roden's a better defender than Stroke. Yeah. Joel Perreault scoring the goals for them. We all know what he can offer. Dan James is their top creative threat. I mean, there's just so many areas I think they can hurt us. They've also got some, weird players in that team in terms of, different threats. The one who comes to mind for me is Firpo.
Yeah.
He is a really bizarre player. Obviously, he's normally a left back. But if you see some of the positions he takes up, I don't know how the hell we're going to defend against him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you saw it, there was a goal against West Brom where they crossed it in from the left and he scored with his head in the 6-yard box. And it was a cross from the left-hand side and he's the left back. This guy's taking up centre-forward positions. It's there's so much fluidity in that team. I don't know how we defend against it. The only thing I think we can rely on is I think Meslier's hopeless.
Yeah, he is probably one of the worst keepers in the league.
I think if they had even a vaguely competent keeper, they'd be 10 points clear.
Yeah, they probably would have won it by now, wouldn't they?
But we've just got to test him with shots, got to rely on the fact he's constantly low on confidence. And the other thing that I think could help us is a midfield of Tanaka and Aronson, both brilliant players. It's quite frantic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the game suits us when it is quite frantic.
Yeah, I think Franco could break that up really well, to be fair.
Franco and O'Brien are both up and at 'em, high energy type players.
Absolutely.
Which is what we've got to hope. So we've played 3 games since we last spoke. What have you made of those 3 fixtures?
I thought we looked decent against Borough. I mean, we got the job done at the end of the day. There were points in the game where we could have taken more chances and could have looked a bit better. And ultimately, it's a Michael Carrick side. They did control most of the game, but we looked pretty decent. Watford, I thought we were very poor. We looked really, really flat.
I thought we were probably the better side on the balance of play in that one, but I just don't think it was necessarily.
It was a pretty terrible match, to be honest.
It was quite a low quality affair.
And then, that Burnley game was...
I mean, I've said it written down here, there's absolutely no shame in losing to Burnley.
No, not at all. I mean, you're lucky to score against them, so to beat them would be...
I mean, they've already beaten the clean sheet record, for God's sake. 27 clean sheets in the league is ridiculous. We kept, I think it was over 20 in the season under Cooper on it, and that felt insane.
Yeah, it felt nuts.
To only concede 10 goals all season. I mean, if we can't break that down, there's no shame in that. It's 27 other games where they haven't been able to break them down. And I mean, they've added a bit more in terms of attacking threat now as well. I think, lots of teams have escaped with a 0-0 against Burnley this season. When they've brought in someone like Marcus Edwards in January, that threat is a lot bigger now.
Yeah.
So I think there's no shame really in losing that game. I think the Watford game probably should have done better. I think the game that's probably best to focus on is the Borough game, given we won that one. It was the most enjoyable. Who would you say stood out for you the most in that game?
It was probably Song. I mean, it was probably his best performance of the season, wasn't it? Really nice goal, first goal for the club, and to be fair, he absolutely deserved it. I think we said it on the last pod that all he needed was one, and it would just hopefully get him going a bit. And
we say he needed one to go in off his arse, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and he certainly didn't do that.
It was a great goal.
It was, yeah.
To be fair.
It was a lovely finish, and I think he deserved every credit for that, because I don't know if you thought this, but I thought it was a little bit of a glimpse into what we saw from before the injury.
Yeah, I think it was a glimpse into his highlights too from his previous club. He used to score those sort of finesses from outside the box all the time, and it was almost like, where were they? And then finally he hits one, and it was a really nice goal.
He needs that confidence, and hopefully, I mean, Om has his critics. I'm not 100% sure that he's physically up to it for English football, but technically we saw it. He's got it in terms of the technique. It's just whether physically he'll ever get there, but in terms of ability, I think he's more than got enough to play
Yeah,
at
I
this
think he
level.
could be a great player. And I mean, even off the bench, next season, if we are to sign wingers, he's a good option.
I hope we sign wingers in the summer.
Well, we better add.
Let's be honest, we need some wingers.
We better add.
I mean, other options are Ronald and Giannelli. Giannelli obviously back.
Don't forget Bianchini.
We'll come on to him in a bit. Bianchini is one of the people who's asked in the questions today. We've got Ronald, we've got Parker, who whether we see him more as a right back or a winger, I don't know, and Giannelli as well.
Yeah,
it's nice to see Josh Giannelli back, I'd say, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a shame, really, that it probably hasn't worked out at this point. You can say that, because he just can't seem to keep fit.
He's only got a year left on his contract as well.
It is really sad because when he first came, that little stretch under Michael Duff, he looked really promising. He scored against QPR, handball, but great goal in my books. And then he won a pen against Sheffield Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the tackle he got injured in. And he's been out for, a year and a half since, which is crazy.
His Achilles basically exploded, essentially, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He ruptured his Achilles, and it was just like one of the worst injuries you can get, isn't it?
No, it's a shame because I think he looked fantastic for Hearts. He used to play off Ellis Sims, didn't he? And he looked really good. He's a really fast player. He's got a lot about him. But I suppose that does come with being a player who purely relies on speed, is that, your legs are going to be a bit shot, and injuries like this are much more common.
Exactly. And I think there'll be a level of nervousness now. I think he'll probably have lost half a yard of pace.
Yeah.
But for all that, if he can nurse his way back towards full fitness by the end of the season, I'd love to see him given a start at some point, because I think he's surely got more to offer.
Well, I think he could be a great championship player. He's definitely a good player for this level.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's surely got sort of more to offer than some of the other options we've seen at points this season. At his best.
That we've proper talked about.
Yeah, we've said what we think of the likes of Ronald and people like that. One thing that I think has really impressed recently is, I think, the upturn in form of Zan Vipotnik. Since Luke Williams left, since Sheehan arrived, I think he's looked a lot better. What have you made of his recent form?
Yeah, I think he does look much better. I mean, he's getting a lot more shots off. He looks a lot more confident. Obviously, he scored once or twice, which is, the key definer ultimately for a striker. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's looked a lot. Sheehan obviously referenced it in the press conference after that first game that he took charge of, which is they look to get bodies around him. And I think it's been clear to see what the merits of that are. I mean, he looked so isolated previously under Luke Williams. There were times when he'd be trying to hold the ball up and nobody was anywhere near him. And he's not Akin Fenwa. He can't hold the ball up all day.
Yeah.
He's quite good at that, but he's not he's not a complete freak of nature. And to have people closer to him and playing off him a lot higher up the pitch has really made a difference, I think. He just looks a lot more confident as well.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people forget how young he is, me included, because he's
looks a lot
he's so
older.
massive, and
Yeah.
he's Eastern European, so he has a bit of an aged face.
He looks a lot older than he is.
But he's very young, and I think he does have a lot of time. I think he could become a half decent championship striker easily. Definitely a 10 goal at least.
You're 17. So
He is Wolfie.
He is Wolfie. Every time I see him, it comes to mind. But I can't believe he's like a year and a half older than me. It blows my mind.
Is he? Good
It's
lord.
quite scary.
You look 12.
Yeah,
compared to
I know. But I think I'd love to see him given a run of games.
Yeah.
Sort of between now and the end of the season. I think he's got a lot more to offer us than Bianchini.
100%. I think, Bianchini's a bit all over the place, and he's just pure excitement. He'll just run all day. That's all he's got,
He
really.
works his socks off, in fairness.
But Vipotnik's got a bit more of a actual number 9 mould about him, which is, what we need, really, isn't it?
I think if we give him a run of games between now and the end of the season, see what he's all about. Obviously, I do think we need another striker in the summer anyway. As we said, we come on to the conversation about strikers in one of the questions. But I think, we will probably be needing another striker.
Yeah.
It's almost now what sort of striker we after, what sort of mould of player. Because if Vippy can offer us enough and keep going the level that he is at the moment, I think he's got, he's doing enough at the moment to be a championship striker and quite a good one at that.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see how it goes between now and the end of the season for him, but keep an eye on him, I reckon, because his upturn in form has really impressed me recently.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the audience questions? Do you want to go? Do you want to go first? And I'll ask you the first one. Yeah. So, Rhys Davis on Twitter. We have 5 forwards contracted for next season, as we were just saying.
Yeah.
Mikola Kukurevich, Zan Vipotnik, Liam Cullen, Florian Bianchini, and Jerry Yates. What would you do with each of them come the summer?
So, off the bat, I think Mikola Kukurevich and Jerry Yates are both absolute write-offs. I know you will disagree on the Jerry Yates
I disagree on one of them.
But I'll go with Kukurevich first. I think, a lot of people argued that he deserved a bit more game time last season, whatever. He's gone out on loan. I think he's played 18, started 14 in 1,088 minutes at, a club that seemingly loved him in his last spell, has scored 4 goals.
Yeah.
So, I don't think he's going to offer much. He's pretty much the epitome of what that Watson era is, just complete random signings with, no real substance.
Yeah.
And, he's shown nothing, and I don't think he would ever show anything.
And on, not cheap wages either, to put it mild.
Yeah. And we paid a good chunk for him.
We paid
too.
a chunk for him, yeah. He's, as you say, he's the signing that I think typifies the Watson era. Allow me to make the case for Jerry Yates.
Go on.
I think there is potentially more to come from him if we did give him an opportunity. I see him as not really a striker. I think he was a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing last season in that, we've all seen quite how isolated strikers were under Luke Williams and even before that under Duff, to be honest. The problem in terms of we can't get anyone anywhere near them. Well, if that's changed recently and we are getting people close to the strikers, then I think he might be worth a go because he can finish. We know that. He scored enough goals for Blackpool in the past. He scored enough goals for Derby this season. He scored, more than Bianchini, more than Vipotnik. He'd be our second top scorer if he was here.
I'm just a bit worried about his role if we were to bring in a manager who plays the Swansea way, as we were saying. Because what would you see as the Swansea way? Sort of a 4-3-3?
Yeah.
Where does he play there? Because he was a wide forward sort of at Blackpool, but he couldn't really play that here, could he? So, I just don't see where he really fits. I couldn't see him as like a solo striker again.
Could you not see him sort of, without wishing to get too technical into this, like playing like off the left, sort of finding little pockets of space, not necessarily as like a nominal winger, but you don't see sides playing with 2 touchline wingers anymore. If we went for a front 3 of like Yates, Vipotnik and Ronald, God, that sounds horrible when you put it like that.
Yeah, Jesus, give up now, honestly.
But I think in terms of roles, not necessarily personnel, that works.
Yeah,
maybe.
Look, I can see it, and I'm
kind of playing devil's advocate.
And I'll be honest, when we originally signed Jerry Yates, I was buzzing. I really liked him at Blackpool. I thought he was a great player, and obviously, the window before he was linked to like Forest, Rangers, he was linked to some big moves.
He nearly went to Rangers for quite a big fee, didn't he?
There's obviously a player in there, and I wouldn't completely write him off, maybe as much as I write off Kukurevich.
You could forget him.
But I just, I don't see much of a world where, it depends who the manager is, really, doesn't it? I think that's the massive thing.
I would put, not quite in the Kukurevich category, but I would put Bianchini in the sort of try and get rid of this category.
I'd loan him, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we got rid of him permanently. But
and then,
it's a loan back to the French.
100%. And then I think it's a permanent in 2 years, potentially.
It feels like it's going that way. He's, he works hard. He'd go with our best wishes, of course, but I just don't think he's up to it, personally.
And then, as for the other two, Vipotnik and Cullen, we've discussed Vipotnik, put the pieces around them and they'll succeed, I think. I think, we've seen that with Vipotnik the last few weeks.
I left Cullen out of that front,
as we've said.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Now I feel really stupid.
Of
course I'd play Cullen.
He played behind them.
It goes without saying. Of course I'd play Cullen, but now I feel really stupid. And I want that edited out, but it's not going to be.
Yeah, you're going to have to live with that front three of Ronald, Vipotnik.
No, go on, let's move on.
Yates.
What one have you got for me? Dear Lord.
Thomas Gould, shout out to him, Pontardawe legend, start with. With Melko.
We don't choose these questions based on favouritism.
You chose them, to be fair. With Melko Waddell coming in the summer, can he play alongside Franco as a 2, or do we need to sign a defensive midfielder to get the best out of him?
So what I see Vidal as quite a similar player to Lewis O'Brien. I mean, statistically, they are quite similar. They pick up very similar sort of pockets of space on the pitch. And they both sort of occupy that sort of left central midfielder role, isn't it? Yeah. Potentially Vidal plays a little bit wider, I think, for his current club. But I think when we bring him in, we'll be looking to play him there. I think, this is a bit of sort of, again, slightly technical point, but there's a sort of habit in recruitment to look at what someone's doing with their current club too much. You're more interested in what they can do for your club. Yeah. And I think what Vidal will do is come in and play the same role as O'Brien. So you can look at it sort of in the same way as the current midfield is being set up. And I would like a sitter, and I think it's clear the club think that way as well. I mean, we, let's be honest, aggressively pursued Jacob Wright in January.
Yeah.
We're clearly very keen to bring that sort of player in as a replacement for Matt Grimes. And I think that has to carry on into the summer, because if we are going to, we need a variety of options. We talked about just now playing, 4-2-3-1 essentially, or 4-3-3 with a sort of more attacking-minded midfielder. We also need to give ourselves the opportunity to play a more defensive-minded midfielder, and should be looking to bring someone else in. I've said in the last episode, I said it in a thread, Adam Randall will be that player for me. If it was up to me, I'd be signing him as soon as Plymouth are relegated. Mm-hmm. If not, try and sign Jacob Wright again if Norwich don't end up making that on permanent. But I just think we need that sort of player, and that sort of skill set is hard to find, let's be honest.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, that sitter is definitely important. I think, you can see the sort of Grimes hole, whether people will admit it or not. There is a hole in our build-up a bit now without Grimes. We look completely different. Our shape is completely different now.
The one thing that I think has saved it from being so noticeable is the fact that we're not playing, heavy possession, slow
the fact we're willing to hit it along a bit more often. I think our play has sort of suffered as a result of not having that role in there. And, I don't want to play exactly of the mould of Matt Grimes. Of course I don't, and I think fans would go nuts if we were suggesting.
I also just don't think you find that player.
No, but, even so, I think fans would go absolutely mental if we were suggesting that. But you do need a player who's sort of more of a commander in the midfield and sort of can push it forward.
Yeah, you need someone to sort of pick up the tempo, slow down the tempo, control the game. And if you're going to play a very possession-based style, which is what you'd imagine we go back to, then I don't really see how you can get away with it without that sort of player.
Yeah,
I think, it's not a slight on O'Brien and Franco. They are just very busy players. That's what they offer.
Yeah, you need sort of more of a calm head in the middle.
Yeah, you do. And, potentially, that's what I think Joe Allen can do for us at some point if he ever comes back into the side with them, is offer us that bit more control and potentially show us what we're missing, basically.
Yeah.
I think that midfield tree would work really well, actually. And that's sort of just a side point, but I think they would work really well. JM Purnell 16 on Instagram. How do you think we can boost attendances while in the Championship and League One? How do we attract younger fans and them have us as their main team as opposed to Liverpool or United, etc.?
Well, I've really racked my brain about this question all day. Sort of, I've used AI. I've looked at my old threads because this is a topic that I've been very passionate about.
Never miss an opportunity to have a go at the fans.
No, this is something I'm really passionate about.
It's the main criticism of the lives, isn't it, over the years? But
yeah, I have threads about how they could do this in the past, calling for all sorts of different things. But ultimately, I think it will always come down to the place and the fan base. A lot of people from Swansea, are always going to be Man United fans, are always going to be Liverpool fans. I don't think we're ever going to stop that. I have mates who support Man United. I don't know about you. It's just common. I don't think we could really massively change season ticket prices. I looked into that and I realised that my season ticket was, probably about £24 a game, which I think is really reasonable and one of the cheapest in the league.
I'd like it to be a bit cheaper than that, but that's not how it works.
But
is it?
But I think that's a really reasonable price, and even so, I think.
And you sit in the most expensive stand as well, don't you? You sit in the West.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's cheaper in
for
the
better
South
or for worse.
Yeah.
But even so, like
a West Ham warrior and a South Ham warrior every year.
But they've introduced this payment plan scheme now, so people don't have to pay straight away, which I think is really good as well. Helps people out who are struggling with financial aspects. I think the massive thing is the product on the pitch.
But this is exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, the product on the pitch is what brings people to the gate, isn't it? If people. And, even when we're not playing at a particularly high level, having sort of individual players who get people through the gate. Old fans always talk about it with Lee Trundle, isn't it? He's going to turn up and do amazing things on a weekly basis, and that gets people excited and go, I want to go down and see what this guy can do.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's understandable. So improve the product on the pitch, basically. And then.
But I think ultimately, and of course this sort of fits my view, I think a lot of the buck does lie with the fan base. If people wanted to go to the games, they'd go to the games. They go to the Cardiff game every year. We sell out for Cardiff every year because it's the derby. Where are they for the rest of the season?
Have you ever heard the phrase "never bite the hand that feeds you"?
Yeah, but where are these people for the rest of the season?
No, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. But
I say it every year, like, some of my mates, like missuses and stuff, go to the Cardiff game and stuff, and it's like, why?
No, I know what you mean. It is like it draws everyone out the woodwork, doesn't it? But
yeah.
We could sell 30,000 for the Cardiff game.
You could meet anyone in Swansea, and they will tell you they're the biggest Swansea Jack ever. They love the club. They die for the club. But if you ask how many games they go to in a season, it'll be one, or it'll be two.
The
Bristol
games.
City away, Cardiff at home. The only two games. And, that's not a slight. If people can't make games, obviously there are reasons for that. But there are plenty of people that could make these games and just choose to watch it on a dodgy Fire Stick.
Don't they?
Yeah. So there you are.
Some of us have been known to do that before now, and it's not me I'm talking about when I say that.
Maybe so. I was in university, though.
Go on. Go for the next one.
Final question is from Dax Powell on Instagram. Shout out to him because he has been an Only Swans
follower. He is a
for
loyal follower.
About 6 years. If a club were to have noticed Giancarlo Franco and take him off of us in the summer, where do you think he goes? But better yet, where would he have the best impact?
Yeah, so, Franco's a sort of unusual one in that, like, I've thought this about Pro before. With English players, when you have a really high-rated English or British player at the club, they don't not necessarily known to travel well. You play a premium for English players. So foreign clubs, I think, are always slightly less interested. Whereas when you have a foreign player, I think, he could go anywhere. In my eyes, Marseille could come in from the summer. Yeah. I don't know why that's my example, but, like, I feel like clubs all over Europe.
It's like Sara with Galatasaray,
yeah,
isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's a really good example. I feel like foreign clubs will always be sort of interested in what foreign players have to offer in this level because you pay less for premium for them. Franco will have had interest from all over the continent before coming here. You mentioned Galatasaray just now.
That's exactly why, to be fair.
He was rumoured to be joining Galatasaray before he came here, which God knows how he went from that
Andy
to
Coleman,
this.
Paul.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. But, I do think he's not ready yet to make a big move. I think if he went to the Premier League, it would be too early for him. And that's not a slight on him.
Yeah, no, I think he is a while away yet still.
I think he needs another year here. Or if somebody comes in for him, it needs to be, from a non-top 5 league. Back to Portugal is the obvious one, to one of the big Portuguese clubs. We've seen with Gyökeres what a move from the Championship to that level can do. Turn him into arguably one of the world's best strikers. And didn't see the best of that down here. But I think with Franco, I think there are too many deficiencies in his game at the moment. Mm-hmm. He's obviously, availability is a thing. He doesn't play that much. He misses midweek games because of conditioning, whatever.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever really play 90 minutes even now. And I think that could be found out a little bit at Premier League level. I also just think he's a bit frantic.
I think he's still quite a while away from a real step up yet. And I think a lot of people might sort of be confused at that. But I think the only reason he looks so above this level right now is because the rest of the team is so below the level in comparison to him.
Yeah. I think as well, the comparison for me is Downs. When Downs left, I think he left a year early and has really ended up paying for that since, given he ended up back in the Championship last year with Southampton. I think if, it would come a year too early for him. I think next summer,
absolutely,
summer 2026, he'd be ready to go. And I think, another year in the Championship with us. Or the other only way I really see him going is if he goes to the continent, I don't think there's anything we can really do about that.
Yeah, that could happen.
I think that could well happen this summer. But I think if he was to go to a top-end Championship club, he'd do well. Where would he succeed? I think he'd succeed in a really high-intensity system, high pressing.
Yeah.
A Bournemouth, if they were playing at this level, do you know what I mean? That kind of football is where I see him. The example I've written down here is he'd have been unbelievable for Bielsa's Leeds.
Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But that sort of side, I think, is what Franco would really suit. But at the moment, I just don't think he's quite ready yet. But that's not a slight on him. I'd say he's probably been, it's between him and Vigouroux for the best sign of the season. He's obviously a fantastic, fantastic player. And let's hope we get to see even more of him.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love it if he was here another year, to be fair. I think everyone's sort of expecting that he won't be, but
I can.
I wouldn't
no,
write it
I
off.
think-
I think he'll be here.
I
I
think
do
he
think
will.
he'll be here, but I think a lot of people are.
I think
under
there'll
the
be
assumption
interest,
that, yeah.
but I think he'll probably still be here.
If he were to move, I'd like to see him go
Yeah.
to Porto, I reckon, because he's from there.
Yeah, that'd be
as I
fun.
said. Yeah. So, yeah, as always, we appreciate you all for watching, and we'll see you all in a bit.
Take care.